Hello. This is Lith. I have recorded this video 3 times with many errors. Getting very salty, so please bear with me. I want to make a very basic, not basic I guess, but I want to make a full Paragon guide for you guys. A lot of time constraints and scheduling conflicts, so this isn't very easy to find time to, go over everyone with. So I'm just gonna make a video real quick. This is gonna be as basic as possible, alright, so bear with me. I'll try to include timestamps, I guess, for relevant when things happen, but whatever. So Paragon, let's talk about the build real quick. So 61 Paragon, obviously. I find 10 Warlord, 5 Tempest to be the highest parsing spec. There is 8 Paragon, 7 Champion. There is 10 Paragon, 5 Tempest. 10 Rift Blade is gone. You no longer have energy issues in this build, so you do not need that. That was the whole point of it. There are other variants. I think there's a Reaver variant, I want to say. There's like a 10 Reaver or something like that. I don't think it works very well, but this is the highest parsing spec that I have because Paragon specifically scales so high with AP and that sort of things. So I'm in the PTS test gear. This is all standard test gear. Absolutely none of it is anything other than that. It only gives me 1800 CP, YQQ. That'll be important when we look at the parse breakdown later. I've scaled my UI. Sorry if something looks weird. It's not usually this big. So in the Warlord tree, you want to go 10% strength rather, and then 10% AP weapon damage. And then in Tempest, you want to go 5% or 5 into amped, which is 10% AP weapon damage. Tempest also gives you enhanced conductivity, which is an extremely good buff, self buff. What else we got? Okay, so the masteries, power manipulation. Okay, definitely want that because you're not going to want to be caught channeling because you'll delay cooldowns. You don't want to do any of this stuff. You don't need fluid movement, whatever. 64 mastery. This is not open for debate by anyone. This is a consensus by all warriors ever that deliberate strikes in a Paragon centric build is the top ability to have. And why is that? That is solely because of Turn the Blade reducing your global cooldown, and the damage of building Rage, the damage component of deliberate strikes, is not reduced by the damage reduction that Turn the Blade gives. So you get 3 proc every 3 seconds. You get a proc. It hits for like 40k, if not more. It's quite ridiculous. It ends up being about 10 to 12% of your damage, depending on crit RNG, which is huge. Okay, that's more than any of these tooltips even remotely read. So always deliberate strikes. 63 mastery in a raid setting. This doesn't really matter. I'm parsing on a dummy. I don't care. I get energy reserves for the energy. You don't really need it at all. You don't need energy in the spec. You never run out. If you can get the movement speed, that's fine. Any of the movement speed ones, that's great. Whatever. 62 mastery does matter. You want physiology proficiency. That took a lot of practice to say that word, by the way, because it makes your combat focus increase the next 3 casts of Reaping Harvest by 30% instead of 1 by 50%. This is a big deal. Okay, this is a big deal. The main part of combat focus is to buff one of your Alacrity Reaping Harvests. Okay, that's the whole point of combat focus. The fact that it buffs 3 of them, that's just a side grade. Alright. It's not too much of a DPS. It sounds like, oh wow, that's 90 damage as opposed to 50. That's not how the math works out. I can go over that if you want me to, but it's a lot of painful explaining, and it's actually not even close to 90%. It's closer to like 65, 70. And I'll explain it if you ask me to, but just trust me when I say this. This is said Vic, all the other warriors, like this is what we came to the conclusion to. And this ability was buffed a lot in the PTS, on the PTS when they were developing it. 61 Mastery, I recommend Resonating Strikes. It doesn't matter what you put your points into, but Resonating Strikes gives you a shield, which is important because you'll mainly almost always have full health in raids, so this is the most useful because it prevents burst damage. What do you do? That's the tree. Important things in the tree. The most important thing that I want to stress with the why I have my macros set up like they are is Double Jeopardy, okay? Double Jeopardy lasts 6 seconds and it increases the crit chance of your follow-up attack by 9%, okay? That's huge. It's not super huge, but it's like, in my particular gear set on the PTR or PTS right now, it would be about 1.5k if I wasn't utilizing that properly, and I'll explain why. Let's go over utilities, CC, all that kind of bullshit. Basic builders, you have 3 basic builders: Death Touch, Tranquility, and Setting Moon. Tranquility is ranged and it does the most damage. Death Touch does really good damage, but it's not quite as big as Tranquility. And then Setting Moon is like you're just bread and butter. It doesn't have a cooldown, just use it when everything else is on cooldown kind of ability. Your follow-up attacks, you've got 3 of them. You've got Final Blessing, which is more like an execute, so you use it when a mob is below a certain threshold of health. Rising Waterfall is your bread and butter. It's like your spam follow-up attack. And then you have a dot, which is Open the Stream. It's on a 15-second cold, not 15-second cooldown, 15-second duration. So you don't want to clip the dot, you want to reapply it after it falls off. That's important. So let's take a look at things real quick and we'll connect some dots here, okay? 15-second cooldown, 15-second cooldown, 15-second duration, 15-second cooldown, 30 seconds, 1 minute, and I think that's it. Okay, so what do those all have in common? Common denominator, okay? 15 seconds is the common denominator. So that means that this spec runs on a 15-second rotation block. What that means is that I can tell you right now, there are 4 blocks in this rotation, okay? And each block has a different set of cooldowns you use, okay? And there's only one difference, okay? Is combat focus available? Is alacrity and combat focus available? Or are neither of those available, okay? That's important to know, block rotations, okay? You got to think of it in those, and you will never mess this rotation up. Let's go over CC real quick, and buffs. Where are we going at? Shield of the Will, it's okay. It's whatever. You don't need to use it. I think it's a waste of energy, honestly. Let's see, Sweeping Blades. Okay, so Sweeping Blades lets you cleave up to 4 additional targets. If there is a fight where you want to be cleaving ads constantly, don't use Paragon. Use like Rift Blade, especially coming up. Reaver's pretty good. Champion, if there's a super amount of AoE, like if there's always 2 or 3 targets up, you want to use Champion. And so you don't really use Sweeping Blades. If you have to use Sweeping Blades, don't use Paragon. Turn the Blade, it reduces your global cooldown. It's really, really good. And then you have your way buffs. So you can have up to 2 way buffs. The highest DPS way buffs are Way the River and Way the Wind. So you put those on. If you're soloing, PvPing, you want more sustain, you can heal yourself with Way the Sun. If you don't want to get knocked back and you want to take less damage, Way the Mountain. So like I always recommend having Way the Wind because it's a significant chunk of your damage. Not super significant, but it's the most damage. And then having one of the other 3 depending on what you're trying to do. That's what I would suggest if you're looking at ways. Control. So you have a stun, a debilitate, and an interrupt. Interrupt is ranged, no excuses. The other 2 are more for PvP, not really PvE. Thread the Trees is a leap. That's important to know. It's how you open most fights. Fleet of Foot is a really, really good movement speed cooldown. I'd argue one of the best in the game. Outside of like some rogue bullshit, I don't know. Or I think Way of the Wind would be better from Stormcaller. But this is a close second. Okay, this is a very close second. And then that's it for this. That's it for the tree, okay? So for Tempest, what do we care about? We care about enhanced conductivity. That is it. We do not care about Shock Pulse. We do not care about Skyfall. We do not care about Offensive Blast. Ever, okay? Ever. Don't ever use Shock Pulse. If you're using Shock Pulse, you're playing Paragon incorrectly, okay? If you're disconnected for more than 15 seconds, you shouldn't be playing Paragon. Period. There's no reason to use Shock Pulse. Warlord. So, I don't know how to put this. Recovery Posture is weird because it activates your taunting ability. It's great if you're soloing, if you're PvPing, it's fantastic. But if you're in a raid, you don't need the healing. I wouldn't have it equipped because there are fights where you're going to find Sergeant's Order really, really useful. To yank an ad maybe that the tank can't get to or something like that. And if you have Recovery Posture on, raging, you will taunt that ad, okay? And you don't want to do that. So you don't really care about anything in the Warlord tree. Nothing. You don't use this. You don't use this. You can use that if you're soloing. This is a nice snare, honestly. This is actually like one of the better snares in the game. Eye of the Storm is really, really strong. But there's no PvE situation where you would really need to use it. That's about it for that. Oh yeah. Oh, power manipulation. So we'll go. It's in the macros. We'll go over that. It just adds damage to you for free. Like it's like, hey, free damage. Okay. All right. So let's go over macros real quick and why they're set up like that. Let's see macros. Damn, it's getting late. So the way these macros are set up, you think of them. So how do I put this? So getting to a finisher takes 3 seconds in this build, or no, using a finisher takes 3 seconds in this build, I guess I should say. So all of your, for the most part, all of your macros are going to be set up like that. So it's like, think of them as 3-second chunks, and there's 5 of them, okay? That's 15 seconds. That lines up with all your cooldowns, right? It makes sense. So how do I have this set up? So the first thing you want to do is you want to leap in with Thread the Trees. You can have it on some button. You can also run in with Grasping the Horizon if you know that you're not going to have a disconnect for 30 seconds. So it depends on what opener you want to go with. Thread the Trees is a very, very minute DPS loss, but it will get you to the target immediately, and it will free up Grasping the Horizon if there's a disconnect problem. Click that off. Let me go over this. Alright, so macro 1, I'm going to change it actually. At self. Okay, so it's going to be cast at self, so it applies this buff to yourself, power manipulation, open the stream, and setting moon. Okay, so open the stream as your dot. You want to get that ticking as fast as possible. No, you don't want to delay it for more stacks of Unleashed. No, you don't want to, whatever. I don't know. And that's it for that macro. Your number 2 macro, I call it the Shifting Blades macro. It's going to be Shifting Blades, Final Blessing, Rise and Waterfall, Reaping Harvest, and then Tranquility. It's very important that you have Tranquility with Shifting Blades because it does the most damage out of your builders, and it just hits hard as balls, so like you should probably do that. This is number 2. This is macro number 2. Macro number 3 is going to be Setting Moon macro. This is like your vanilla bread and butter macro. Like you want to just look at bare bones Paragon with no cooldowns, no anything. This is the macro. Okay, so this is it. So like in a situation where this one would be incredibly useful is, say like a huge raid cooldown is about to happen, but you want to delay using your cooldown for that, you would just spam this macro until they are like, hey, flaring power's up. Alright, cool, I'm just gonna hit shit really hard now, you know, like Sikaron contract. Oh, the Sikaron contract's almost up, but not quite. I'll just spam this until it is. You know, that kind of stuff. That's why it's useful. Next one is your number 4 macro. It's Death's Touch, or Death Touch. I don't know why Death Touch. It sounds weird in English, but whatever. Just replace Steady Moon with Death Touch. Easy peasy. Don't macro Steady Moon and Death Touch. Don't do it. You can. It's a DPS loss because of what I talked about earlier with Double Jeopardy. Okay? Where's Double Jeopardy? Where are you at? Here. Double Jeopardy. So if you use Tranquility, in your rotation, if you use Tranquility and then Death Touch in your rotation, like back to back as your builder, you're gonna drop what is that? Double Jeopardy for one of those follow-up attacks, which is a DPS loss of about, like, for me, it's between 1 and 1.5%. So it's like, what, 1,000, 1,500 DPS. That's a pretty big deal if you're trying to min-max. Just don't do it. There's no reason to. It's easy. It's an easy rotation anyway. You just get used to it, and you don't need to do it. It's better to have everything by themselves anyway. That's my rant. So that's your number 4 macro. Your number 5 macro is Combat Focus. Oh, let's go back to this one real quick. Let's go back to Simeon. So why do I have my macro set up like this? Okay, so let's take a look. If you have 0 combo points and you haven't used any ability, why does this macro work? Okay, so you can't use a follow-up attack unless you use a builder. You can't use a finisher unless you have a combo point, and you can always use Steady Moon. So if you're at 0, sorry, I have like hiccups. If you have like 0 combo points and you haven't used a builder previously, and you use this macro, you use Steady Moon, which activates Rising Waterfall and Final Blessing, which after you use one of those gets you 3 combo points, and you want to use your finisher, which is right above Steady Moon. Since you can't use a follow-up attack after a follow-up attack, it disables these after you use them, and it lets you use Reaping Harvest. Okay, so that's how that works. Okay, that's why this macro works. This used to cause insane macro lag back in the day, but believe it or not, Tryon fixed that. I know, it blew my mind. They actually fixed something really important. So, number 5 macro, Combat Focus. Combat Focus is different, okay, because Combat Focus, we need to talk about that for a second. So Combat Focus counts as a builder because it gives you combo points. It's off the global cooldown, and it makes your next 3 Reaping Harvests do 30% more damage. It's not exactly 30% because it's a stacking buff and it's not multiplicative to anything. It's not exactly 30%. Let's just keep it at that. Why is Reaping Harvest on top? Because same logic as I just said, except in reverse. So use Combat Focus, you're at 3 combo points, you want to use Reaping Harvest. This is a builder, you'll be able to use another builder. Or this is a builder rather, you'll be able to use a follow-up attack. Here's your follow-up attack, use it, and then you use a Reaping Harvest again. Okay, that sounds confusing. When you see it in the rotation, it will make perfect sense, okay? And then your alternate 2 macro, I call it alternate 2 for a reason, I'll go over that when we go over the rotation, is Alacrity and Reaping Harvest. You don't have to macro Reaping Harvest here, I just highly suggest it because it's, again, it's about a timing thing, and we'll go over that later. So now that I have that, let me just show you the bread and butter rotation, okay? Bread and butter, let's pretend we're at range here, like, Wayne's like counting down, and make sure whenever Wayne counts down, you always go on 2 because he always likes to pull early. And so, you know, you charge in, use your 1, whatever. Okay, so there's your charge in. Let me get rid of these combo points real quick. Hang on. Alright, we're going to start that over because I had combo points and I didn't want those. Alright, so the base rotation is 1, 2, 3, 4, 3. Okay? Something very important to note about Paragon as well is it's a 15-second rotation with 14 seconds worth of abilities, if that makes sense. So, pros and cons to Paragon is a con is if you have really good latency, it's almost painful to play, because every time you get to your first cooldown, which in this case is shifting blades, it will be off cooldown for a second. So you gotta wait. You gotta sit there and you gotta be like, well, shit, I guess I'll just twiddle my thumbs for a second. And you gotta wait for it to come back up. It is a DPS loss to use an ability in that time, because it will delay that next GCD, and it'll push your cooldowns back a fraction of a second. It's better to just line everything up perfectly and just sit there and do nothing for a second. Real world, you'll probably never even notice that 1 second delay ever, because of server lag, ability lag, all that other bullshit. So you'll probably never notice that on live. If you do, just be aware of it. It's going to happen during shift. It's going to happen before you use shifting blades. Okay, that's it. And this is why you can't macro everything into one macro and then just be like, yeah, let's do this, because you're going to fuck something up because it doesn't line up properly. And this is why you have to have it macroed like this, so that everything lines up properly. Let's see. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 3 is your basic one. Okay, that's your no cooldown block. If you do not have any cooldowns available, that is the block you use. 1, 2, 3, 4, 3. Okay, think of it like that. Very easy. When you have all your cooldowns up, and all your cooldowns meaning alacrity and combat focus, those are the only 2 cooldowns I care about. Okay, your rotation changes. It becomes 1, 2. At the end of the Reaping Harvest that follows shifting blades, you want to use alacrity. Okay, so it's 1, 2, shift 2. For me, it's shift 2. 3, 4, 5. Okay, 1, 2, 3. It's essentially 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, that's, you can't fuck that up. If you can't count to 5, you shouldn't play Paragon. That's what I'm going to say. Alright, so what's it look like? Alright, you want to do a block with alacrity and combat focus. You want to do a block with neither. You want to do a block with just combat focus, and you want to do a block with neither, and then you rinse and repeat, and you do alacrity, combat focus, neither, combat focus, neither, alacrity, combat focus, neither, combat focus, neither. And when you think of this spec in terms of a 15-second rotation, instead of this ability's up, should I use it? This ability's up. Oh no, which one? Think of it in terms of 5. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it becomes a very, very trivial spec to play. So a basic rotation with nothing in it would look like this. So builder, dot, shifting blades, tranquility, all that. That's 2. This is 3, 4, 3. Okay, that's basic. That's it. Done. Okay, so we're gonna do that again. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 3. All right, can't mess it up. All right, when you just have combat focus, the only thing that changes, instead of going 3 at the end, you go 5 at the end. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You see that? You get 2 Reaping Harvests in before you're done with your 5 spam. Alright, and then you go back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 3. Alright, so that's the basic rotation. I'll show you the alacrity one in a second. I'm just waiting for combat focus. Little tidbits. Let's go over something with alacrity real quick that's actually important. You want to use alacrity. So the GCD between your follow-up attack and your Reaping Harvest after your shifting blades. So like, that 1 second delay where the dark circle, the black circle, whatever, spins around your abilities and you can't use them. At the very end of that is when you want to use alacrity, right before you use the Reaping Harvest, almost exactly before. And the reason for that is, especially if you have latency, it will let the last Reaping Harvest of that block benefit from alacrity. Okay, it won't always benefit, but most of the time it should. And so that's the reason why combat focus is at the end, is so that you can fit in another. It's not for the 30% damage buff. We don't care about the 30% damage buff that it gets from combat focus. That's not the point of combat focus. The point of combat focus is to fit another reaping harvest in alacrity block. That's the entire point of it. Is it better to use during shifting blades? Is it better to use? No. And the reason is because you will not have another follow-up and reaping harvest combo to use during alacrity when that cooldown blocks up. Okay, that is the entire reason. Beat me in a parse. I guess is the best thing I can say if you want to refute that. Beat me in a parse consistently. People would argue that all day, and the thing that determines most of a good parse and a bad parse is your crit RNG on Reap and Harvest, especially during alacrity. That will determine most of your like good parse, bad parse. Okay, so during your alacrity and combat, which is your first cooldown block, you go 1, 2. Here's the builder right here. Right here is where you would use alacrity. Okay, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. See alacrity. See how that I fit that last Reap and Harvest barely into that alacrity. How the buff for me fell off right as that Reap and Harvest happened. That's the whole point of combat focus. Okay. That's the whole point, is to fit that extra Reap and Harvest in. It's not for the damage buff. It's for that. Which is DPS, a huge DPS gain. And that's why you don't use combat focus after shifting blades, because it doesn't matter nearly as much. And because since it buffs the next 3 ones anyway, your shifting blades proc will get the next shifting blades proc will get the benefit of it to begin with, so it doesn't matter. Alright, so let's go over that again. So block 1, block 2, block 3, block 4. Okay, that's all you need to remember. 1, 2, shift 2, 3, 4, 5 is block 1. And then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 3. And then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 3. And you rinse and repeat that. Okay? Really simple. You can't mess it up. And that's just for parsing. If you have cooldowns coming up, if you have like a super raid cooldown, it's okay to hold off. It's okay to hold off a little bit. Just use your setting moon macro, which is, I have it labeled as 3. You don't have to have it anything set up like this. Is just how I have it set up. All right. Just make sure you use that bread and butter one I talked about earlier, where it's just setting moon. Okay, and that's what you would use to delay your cooldowns. Little tidbit as well, flurry. So, flurry. Let's talk about that. I suggest using it for disconnects, but you can put it into your single target rotation to do more DPS. There are several ways you can do that. One is on a mechanic like a Sicker Run contract. You can full channel it at the end of it, and you'll prolong that Sicker Run contract buff on your flurry, and it'll be more DPS. That's one way you could use flurry. Another way you could use flurry, which is the most common way, is during those blocks, the second and fourth block where you don't have combat focus or alacrity, you use it in place of a setting moon somewhere. Okay, and the most efficient way to use it is at the end. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 3. Instead of doing the 3 at the end, you would go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then this is where you would do flurry right now, and you do it for 2 ticks, and then you get your finisher off, and then that's that, and then you rinse and repeat your stuff. Okay, that's it. That's Paragon. Congratulations, you can play Paragon now. Any questions? I'm on a lot. Send me a message. I'll sit down with you and walk through anything. If it's confusing, just hit me up. I guess I'll see you in 3.4 when Primos comes out.